Hello, everybody, and welcome to Digital Hammurabi. Today, I am very excited to be joined once again by the wonderful Eli Tadmor. You asked to have him back, and we've delivered, mainly because Eli was amazing and actually offered to come back, which is honestly a rarity in the podcasting world. So, Eli, thank you so much. It's a pleasure to have you back again.
Oh, that's so kind of you. Hi, lovely to be here. So today's subject is dear to my heart, since I do love the Bible. It's wonderful, and I do love the Babylonians even more. So I'm extremely happy to be here. Before I start, so today we're going to talk about the Babylonian context of the book of Ezekiel. And I'm going to talk about some themes and some loanwords. There's going to be some more exciting stuff and less exciting stuff. I think, can I start the slideshow?
Please go for it.
Cool. Share. Share screen. Screen. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Cool. Just going to load this up. Okay. Great. Nope. I guess technical difficulties. Yeah. Here we go. Yeah. Is it shared? Do you see the Michelangelo thing?
Yes. There we go.
Okay. It's a bit difficult to. And I just, okay. Yes, everything's fine. Great. So in here we see the depiction of the prophet Ezekiel on the Sistine Chapel, Mr. Michelangelo. Ezekiel did not have a very happy life. Basically, he was part of the first exile of the Judeans from Judah in 593. Basically, a few years before the Babylonians came and demolished everything and destroyed the temple, they came and only exiled the elite and the educated and, the well-to-do, at least some of them. And Ezekiel was one of them, and he was settled in Babylonia, which we might imagine was quite a shock. I mean, not only did he have to walk the whole way, and to reiterate, this is walking from Judah in Israel to in Israel or Palestine, however you define it, to the south of Iraq. That is an immensely long journey, especially when you're being chased by, you're being forced to go on it by your tormentors, which is terrible for everyone. But he was exiled to this place. And why am I showing Tel Aviv? Because the place that he was exiled to, or the place to which he came in the end, was called Tel Aviv. And just an excursus on why Tel Aviv is actually called Tel Aviv, which is kind of an interesting question. So when Herzl published his book Altneuland on the prospect of a Jewish state, they translated it as Tel Aviv. And why? Because Tel in Hebrew is a ruined mound, and Aviv is spring. So Altneuland, old new land, was translated into Tel Aviv, because Tel is the ruined part and Aviv is the spring. But then again, that's not what Tel Aviv means at all, by the way. So let's look at the passage. The Spirit lifted me up and bore me away. This is after the vision that we will get to in a second. I went in bitterness, in the heat of my spirit, the hand of the Lord being strong upon me. I came to the exiles at Tel Aviv, or Tel Abib, who lived by the river Kvar, and I sat there among them, stunned for 7 days. So what is Tel Aviv? Tel Aviv is Til Abubi, mound of the flood. So Abubu, it's a very funny word, is the Akkadian word for flood, and Til Abubi is the ruined mound of the flood, as in a settlement so ancient, probably it's named after a Tel that was thought to have been left over, to have been by the flood. Basically a settlement that was destroyed by the flood, an ancient place. And we do have records of this place, by the way. And Ezekiel was part of this community of Judeans in Babylonia, and we know that they kind of prospered. They bought and sold stuff. We have documents from a place called Al-Yahudu, city of the Judeans, or city of the Jews, in which Judeans traded and wrote in cuneiform and just generally lived. And there's been a Jewish community in Iraq, I mean, until 1948. I mean, there was a community there for 2,500 years. I mean, they had a good time for themselves. And I think the first thing... Oh my God, sorry. So, this is adorable. I'm sorry, this is far more important than anything I'm saying. Hello. Okay, so we'll wait a second.
Sorry. They've woken up, so now they must be fed. Hi.
Oh, no.
Hi. You're okay.
This is again far more important than anything I say. Okay, so we'll move to the next slide. Oh, I went the wrong slide. Yeah. Okay, so I think the first thing that we should start with is Ezekiel's vision. The book starts with him having this amazing experience, this audio visual kind of better than a movie kind of thing. So I think we should just read through this passage and bear in mind the Hebrew is exceedingly difficult. And as for part of it, no one knows what it means. So any translation you would read into English is very much an interpretation. So well, let's read this and then let's focus on the stuff that we're going to get to. So in the 30th year, in the 4th month, on the 5th day of the month, that is the 30th year of Nebuchadnezzar, I think. In the 30th year, in the 4th month, on the 5th day of the month, as I was among the exiles by the river Kvar, the heavens were opened, and I saw visions of God. On the 5th day of the month, it was the 5th day of the exiled King Joachim, so basically the 5th year since he was exiled. The word of the Lord came to the priest Ezekiel, son of Buzi, that's a kind of funny name, isn't it? Buzi, I think it's quite a funny name. In the land of the Chaldeans by the river Kvar, and the hand of the Lord was on him there. As I looked, a stormy wind came out of the north, a great cloud with brightness around it, and fire flashing forth continually. And in the middle of the fire, something like a gleaming amber. And bear in mind notice the amber. We will get to the amber. It's extremely important. In the middle of it was something like 4 living creatures. This was their appearance. They were of human form, each had 4 faces, and each of them had 4 wings. Their legs were straight, and the soles of their feet were like the sole of a calf's foot, and they sparkled like burnished bronze. How fancy. Under their wings, on their 4 sides, they had human hands, and on the 4 they had and the 4 had their faces and their wings thus. Their wings touched one another. Each of them moved straight ahead without turning as they moved. As for the appearance of their faces, the 4 had the face of a human being, the face of a lion on the right side, the face of an ox on the left side, and the face of an eagle. Such were their faces. Their wings were spread out above. Each creature had 2 wings, each of which touched the wing of the other, while 2 covered their bodies. Each moved straight ahead. Wherever the spirit would go, they went, without turning as they went. In the middle of the living creatures, there was something that looked like the burning coals of fire, like torches moving to and fro among the living creatures. The fire was bright, and lightning issued from the fire. And the living creatures darted to and fro like a flash of lightning. So this is fun. He's having a nice, quiet day, just walking by the river, and then he sees God. It's happened.
As one does.
As one does, we can just imagine him walk. We can just imagine him walking by the river, and then he sees God, and he sees this vision, this psychedelic, amazing kind of thing with beasts with 4 heads, and they're doing things, and it's kind of amazing. And let's just focus on one part of this vision, which we haven't got to yet. So I'll just read this. Above the expanse that was over their heads. And when I read expanse, the Hebrew word is rakia, which can mean, which literally means heaven, or it's translated in the King James Version, I think, as firmament. And I think that's the right translation. But above the expanse that was over their heads, or the heaven, or the sky that was over their heads, was the figure of a throne with the appearance of sapphire stone. And above, on the figure of a throne, was a figure with the appearance of a human being. From the appearance of his loins upward, I saw the likes of chashmal. And what's chashmal to any modern Hebrew speakers here? In modern Hebrew, this means electricity. It's actually a very commonly used word. But we will get to what it actually means. I kind of spoiled it before by saying it's amber, but we'll get to why we think it's amber. Having something with the appearance of fire surrounding it. So we have from the upper body of the human figure something like chashmal, and something with the appearance of fire surrounding it. Notice, by the way, that Ezekiel is very careful to see the appearance of. It's like, this looks like this, but we don't actually know, so I'll just describe it. It's all very metaphorical. And from the appearance of his loins downward, I saw something with the appearance of fire, and he was surrounded by a radiance. Like the appearance of the bow that is in a cloud. A rainbow is so nice. On the rainy day, such was the appearance of the surrounding radiance. That was the appearance of the figure of the majesty, let's say, of the Lord, to not offend any religious listeners. When I saw it, I fell on my face. I would go crazy. I'm just seeing that. That is a lot. So this word chashmal. So this word was in Ezekiel. I first have to explain what a hapax legomenon is, which it might have come up on the channel. So a hapax legomenon, and I'm going to have to bring my computer charger in a minute because my computer is going to die. A hapax legomenon is a word that only appears once in a given corpus. That is a word that cannot be compared. It basically, the way philology works is you have a word in a certain context, and you don't know exactly what it means. So you look at the other contexts in which the word appears, and you just kind of figure it out. But with the hapax legomenon, you can't really do that because you only have one occurrence and you have no idea, or basically several occurrences in the same context. Oh, is it so cute? Yeah. I'm sorry.
No, you're good.
Absolutely adorable. Okay, so we don't entirely know what this means. And the word chashmal was extremely mysterious. It doesn't have any obvious etymology. And there's actually a lovely story in the Babylonian Talmud, which I will read to you. I guess I won't read the Hebrew, but the English version is a kind of the Hebrew version with some explanations. The sages taught an incident occurred involving a youth who was reading the book of Ezekiel in the house of his teacher. And the Hebrew word is tinok, which literally means baby. It could mean youth as well, or little child even. So it's not exactly a youth. When we say youth, we think of a teenager, but the word really means just small boy. And he was able to comprehend the electrum, that is the same chashmal. And the fire came out of the electrum and burned him. And they sought to suppress the book of Ezekiel due to the danger it posed. So basically, one guy kind of understood, one child understood what chashmal was, and here the translator's electrum. And the listeners might be, or the watchers might be confused. Why am I translating it as amber 1 second, electrum the other, referring back to chashmal? And that is because there was a major disagreement on what it is. The Greek word electrum can mean both amber and the metal electrum. And the metal alloy, that is. And for 2,000 years, there were just guesses. There were guesses that this was an acronym meaning animals who can talk. It's kind of weird. And we didn't know what it was. And then Akkadian came along, as Akkadian does, very nicely. And I have to say some people, some commentators got the right answer. But Akkadian really helps. So the Akkadian word is el-meshu. And the question is, how do you get from el-meshu to chashmal? There's something that in Hebrew is called sikulotiyot, metathesis, I think. It's when letters are switched around, sounds are switched around when words are loaned from one language to the other. And Hebrew, a lot of the time, has a ch or h sound when Akkadian doesn't have it. I'm not a comparative linguist, so I'm not going to be able to explain why. But chashmal was compared to this word, el-meshu. And el-meshu means amber. It may also mean electrum, but it means amber, at least we think. And there's some interesting passages that have this kind of weird resonance with the Ezekiel text. So before I continue, just to remember, there are these animals, these beasts, these amazing beasts, and there's a rakia, there's a heaven above their heads. And then there's a throne made of sapphire. And again, sorry to shatter the illusion, sapphire in the Old Testament does not mean sapphire. It means lapis lazuli. So sapphire does not mean sapphire. So instead of imagining this gleaming, sparkling thing, imagine this gorgeous lapis lazuli. And for those that don't know what lapis lazuli is, please Google it. It's so beautiful. I love it.
I think a lapis throne is much more impressive than sapphire, personally.
Lapis throne is just amazing. I love a lapis. I love sorry, we're going to get the computer charger 1 second.
While Eli does that, everyone, I'm going to switch babies. I'll be right back.
So hello, everyone. While she's switching out. So, how is everyone? I can't see the chat. Hope you're having a great day, doing some cuneiform. There was a great thread on Air Natsir on Twitter by a great guy called Andrew Lucas. So if you're interested in the Babylonian merchant, Copper Gun, there's a thread on that. Did you see the Air Natsir? I'm talking about the Air Natsir thread on Twitter. That was wonderful, wasn't it?
It was awesome.
Yes.
Andrew did such a great job with that.
Oh no, he's an amazing guy. I don't know how he sleeps.
I'm not sure he does, if we're very honest.
No. That's why, well, anyway, so El Meshu, so we've got these beasts, and then we've got this kind of heaven or sky above their heads, and then we've got a throne, and on the throne there is a guy, or the semblance of a man, and from his loins upwards is something like the appearance of something. So from the appearance of the loins upward, I saw the like of chashmal, having something to do with the appearance of fire surrounding it. So we have this chashmal and we have this radiance. And we have this text. I think this is a text from Assur. This is an Assyrian text, an Assyrian mystical text from, I would say, about a century or two. This copy, and there's only one, is from a century or two before Ezekiel. And it's a description, it's many things. It's a rather fascinating text. And there's a description of the world. So it's about the heavens and different heavens. So in many religious traditions, you have many heavens. So this wasn't this Babylonian tradition. And just to say, before I read this doesn't mean this one text doesn't represent the general Babylonian view of the cosmos. It's just one way to look at it. So the upper heaven is of, and then this is, for those new to Assyriological text, which is 99.9% of humanity, because you have better things to do. So when there's a word in Akkadian we don't understand, we just put it in the translation like this. So Lulu Danitu stone, God knows what that is. So the upper heaven is of Lulu Danitu stone, belongs to Anum, the sky god, and 300 Igigi great gods dwell within it. The middle heaven of Sagilmut stone belongs to the Igigi. The Lord, that is to say Marduk, is in the Holy of Holies. He took his seat on a lapis lazuli throne. In it he lit a lamp made of amber stone, of Elmeshu, in a paraki ukni ushib, butzi Elmeshi in a libi unamir. That's me butchering some Akkadian. I mean, they would have found my accent absolutely atrocious. So let's talk about this. So we have the sky, a heaven, the middle heaven, and then on it is this lapis lazuli throne, and on it, and there's Marduk sitting there, and there's a lamp. There's a lamp made of el-meshu, butzisha el-meshi. So we've got this rather similar scene. We've got a guy, a god, sitting on a heaven, on a throne made of lapis lazuli, and there's a light of amber. In the biblical thing, there's something with a likeness of chashmal or of amber, and a radiance, a fire. And here there's the fire and the radiance are sort of combined into a lamp made of el-meshu. So this is rather strange. I would say this is rather strangely similar. And here is a diagram of the Babylonian vision of the cosmos as reflected in this text. It was from a lovely article by the Assyriologist Wayne Horowitz. So we have the netherworld or lower earth, the living earth, and then there's the Yashbu stone, which also occurs in the Bible. It's like yellowish and it's transparent. These are the lower heavens on which the stars are, that Marduk put the stars in. The middle heavens, which are made of blue stone, and Bel sits on this lovely, this is a throne, I think, on a lovely lapis lazuli throne, and there's a little lamp. I love this diagram. So basically, we've got the same kind of thing. I hope I was clear that we've got this very similar conception. And I read this wonderful article by a classicist who also dabbles in Assyriology that basically asked, what does this mean? Does this mean that Ezekiel kind of borrowed Babylonian notions of the cosmos, even when describing the holiest thing? And that's very strange, because Ezekiel really didn't like the Babylonians. Ezekiel hated the Babylonians. He hated their culture. By the way, do you hear the noise? Is it fine?
Okay. No, we can't hear anything.
Okay. Ezekiel hated the Babylonians. He hated they took him into exile, the way his tormentors, his captors. But how strange is it that at the holiest moment of theophany, of the sight of the divine itself, that he kind of borrows from Babylonian themes? How weird that is. And he makes the argument, it's a lovely one, and I'm not sure I buy it, that if Ezekiel did see this vision, what was his play wasn't his conscious hatred of the Babylonians, but his unconscious emulation of them. As in, when we have visions, when we have these mystical experiences, we can't control what we see. And what comes into play isn't necessarily the things we say we hate, or it's like dreams. It's exactly like dreams. So maybe he didn't consciously seek to emulate the Babylonians, but unconsciously, as it came, as reflected in what came to play in the vision, that maybe he kind of thought it was neat. But this is not proof. These two texts are similar. Maybe this was also a Judean point of view. We don't know. But the similarity is strange, especially because Ezekiel is in Babylonia when he's writing this. So had it been just your run-of-the-mill prophet, if there is such a thing, in Judea, and I would have said, oh, this is like this Babylonian text, then maybe you could have said, oh, but this is just coincidence. But he is in Babylonia. And that's kind of interesting. Okay. So this is another text with El Meshu, with amber. This is from a prophecy to Issachar. So Assyrian prophecy is kind of boring in a way. It's great. It's very beautifully done. But in the Bible, we have all the interesting prophecies about how the ruling classes are doing terrible things. But in Assyria, we only have the prophecies extent that are all about, the king, about how great the king is, and about how he shouldn't be afraid, and he will crush his enemies, and he will crush his enemies like ants. Kulbabish, it's a lovely phrase. And how Ishtar will roll the heads of his enemies on the ground like the apples of the harvest or something. So it's all about how great the king is, and they're all good prophecies, fun prophecies. It's a bit like movies that have no problems in them and have no crises, are really boring. So in that way, the Assyrian prophecies are quite boring, but quite beautiful at the same time. So I, Ishtar, have established your throne. That is to say, Esarhaddon, the Assyrian king's throne, under the great heaven. I watch over you from a golden abode in the midst of the heavens. I light a lamp of amber, Nur Sha'el Meshi, a light of amber, before Esarhaddon, the king of Assyria. So this is wonderful. This is great. So she's, a lot of lamps. So we've got this association between El Meshu and light. And this is also a lovely image that he's just walking and there's a little light in front of him. And when it's dark, it kind of shines. And I think it's very pleasant. I hope it calmed him down. And there's some more El Meshu things. This is from the Assyrian dictionary. Sometimes I will look at it. But we only have so much time in which to pack all of these things. So that thing, this description, that was the appearance of the majesty of the Lord. This majesty, this thing, this radiance, they say, and he was surrounded by radiance, like the appearance of the bow that is in a cloud on a rainy day. Such was the appearance of the surrounding radiance, and that was the appearance of the figure of the majesty of the Lord. Kvod Adonai. In Hebrew, it's Mar'eh Kvod Adonai. The sight of the figure of the majesty of the Lord. And there's an argument made by a guy called Alster that this thing, this Kvod Adonai is actually the Mesopotamian Melamu. What is Melamu? So in the ancient world at large, there's an association between power and beauty and divinity and light, which is, of course, not exclusive to the ancient Mediterranean world. It's kind of universal as far as I know. And in Mesopotamia, the gods wore this thing, this radiance, this power, this which was called the Melamu. It was a bit like fire, a bit like radiance that showed how powerful they were. So, for example, so they say in this thing, Namriru Melamu Kuma Ishtar. Radiance and Melamu are yours, Ishtar. Nergal is called fire, who wears Melamu. There's a god who is Labish Namurati Umelamu, who wears radiance and Melamu. or Ishtar, who is clothed in fire, who carries Melamu, seen the Lord of Melamu, and Marduk, who wears the Melamu of 10 gods. So this is the way we do things in Assyriology. When we have a word you don't know, that you don't know what it means, you kind of look at the context and see what happens there. And a lot of the time, because the Mesopotamians were very fond, and also the Bible, of course, of a parallelism, that is, you say a thing one way and then you say it another way. And that's wonderful for philology, because then you can compare the first thing to the second thing. And if you don't know a word in the first way they phrased it, you may know it in the second, or the other way around. So this radiance, this fire, may be depicted on this tile, this ancient Assyrian tile, and you see the god, this may be Asur, that may be Shamash, we don't actually know. And we have this radiance about him, and this fire, and this kind of thing. It also says that maybe this Kvod Adonai, this radiance, this fire around the body of God, represents or reflects the Mesopotamian model of Melamu. Here, by the way, I'm not so sure, because the association between fire and radiance and divinity is so universal. Maybe this is just a cluster of associations that exist even in Judah, but it's an interesting kind of thing. And even if it's not a direct borrowing, it shows that the two cultures had a similar kind of understanding of what it looks like to see God, which is very bright and very unpleasant to the eyes, and very fiery and magnificent. Oh, she's so cute. Okay. And the reactions to seeing the Melamu, we remember Ezekiel, when he saw God, he had kind of a natural reaction. He fell on his face. And here we have kind of a similar thing. This is from a vision, an Assyrian vision of the crown prince. It's a fascinating text that we can't really get into, but suffice to say, the Assyrian prince had this vision and in the night, and he goes to the underworld, to hell, basically, and he sees all those creatures. It's very Dante-esque. And then he sees the Akkadian is wonderful. So basically, I'll read you. So he committed this sin. We don't know what it is. And he gets to Nergal, the Babylonian god of death and death and destruction. We knew him last time I was on the show, one might say. We talked about him under the name of Era. Mesopotamian deities, like deities in nature world at large, had many names. This is another name of him. So the netherworld was full of terror. A mighty silence lay before the crown prince. And I just want to say that the word in Akkadian is shishu for silence, which I just love because it's that shh as a word. He took me, he, that is to say, Nergal, took me by my forelock and pulled me in front of him. And the part where he sees Nergal is also wonderful. When I raised my eyes, I saw the valiant Nergal seated upon a royal throne, apparelled with a royal tiara. With both hands he grasped two grim maces, each with two heads. But the Akkadian actually says, I raised my eyes, and then he just says, Nergal! So I raised my eyes, Nergal! Which I think is amazing, because it doesn't even say he saw him. I think this is lovely. I looked at him and my bones shivered. His grimly luminescent splendor, that is Melamushu Ezuti, his angry Melamu, overwhelmed me. I kissed the feet of his great divinity and knelt down. You kneel. You don't, basically that is what you do when you see that the Melamu is overwhelming. It's like overpowering. All you can do is kiss the divinity's feet or fall on your face or kneel. You have to show your basically devotion or obedience or basically reverence to divinity. So we have kind of this similar thing, this similar reaction to the Melamu. So far, is it fine? Is it good? Questions from the chat? Something? Can I go on?
You can keep going. We have a question, but it is about a different part of Ezekiel, so we will get to that later.
No, I'm not a biblical scholar, but don't trust anything I say, except maybe this. Trust the thing as I say on this, not other stuff. So now we get to the question of loans. So Ezekiel was in Babylonia. And when you're in Babylonia, you kind of absorb Babylonian words. It makes sense. I've been in the States, like someone who comes to any country will find their speech kind of, even their native tongue, influenced by the language of the population in which they live. And there's even a commentator, a Jewish commentator from the Middle Ages, who says that Ezekiel didn't know Hebrew very well because he had all those foreign words, which I just love. And Ezekiel is it's a strange book. It's a very strange book. He was a special guy. Lots of issues. Okay. So we have this Ezekiel. This is from Ezekiel 16, and to anyone who knows Ezekiel 16, it may be the most sexually explicit chapter of the entire Bible. It's quite something. The misogyny. I mean, that's kind of anachronistic, but yes, it's intense. So basically, in this chapter, God compares Judah and Israel to two, Judah especially to women, or to a baby that that is found and raised, and then she grows up and becomes attractive, and she becomes the prostitute of many people, and that of course is extremely bad. They weren't very sex positive. They really need to learn more about feminist theory, but they weren't really into that. So it says, I'm going to, when I read this text aloud, I'm not going to say some words because I'm going to keep this PG. That's fine. So you were the prostitute to the Assyrians because you were insatiable. You were the prostitute with them, and still you were not satisfied. You multiplied your prostitution with Chaldea, the land of merchants, and even then you were not satisfied. And then 30. So these translations that I'm giving are from, I think this is from the New Revised Standard Version. And these translations show the dangers of not knowing Akkadian when you're translating the book of Ezekiel, because you might not know things. So how sick is your heart, says the Lord God, that you did all these things, the deeds of a prostitute, let's say. But that's not actually what it means. That is what the translators here thought it meant, but they were very wrong. And the reason they were wrong is that, I'm going to read the Hebrew here. It doesn't sound like Hebrew at all. Ma amula libatech neum Adonai Elohim be'asotech et kol ele ma'ashe isha zona shaletet. Ma amula libatech. To anyone who knows Hebrew here, you can scratch your heads as to what that means. It's very strange, but let's see. So ma, I should have written this down, and I thought I did, but this is this thing. Ma amula libatech. I'm going to write this down. Ma amula. Yeah, I wrote this. Yeah, you see amula, right? You see this amula libatech. So in Akkadian, we have the expression libati malu, to be full of rage. And the way to do this expression is you say, I am filled with someone's rage. If I'm angry with you, I would say, amala libatika. I am full of your rage, which means I'm angry at you. And in Akkadian, I am enraged against you is amala libatiki. And we kind of can see how amala libatiki became amula libatech. So amula libatech makes no sense in Hebrew. But it makes perfect sense in Akkadian. It even has the libatech. So libatech, the ech at the end, means your. So I'm full of your rage. Amala libatiki, amula libatech. This makes perfect sense in Akkadian. This is why you need to know Akkadian when translating the Bible. This is God speaking Akkadian. Or a phrase that was borrowed, basically, we think through Aramaic, but originally from Akkadian. Here are some examples. Ashumi haranika ilum libatika mali. Because of your journey, the gold is filled with anger. So libatika mali is full of your rage. And there are examples here, and it's really fun. So we have God speaking in Akkadian. So God is bilingual. Also in Daniel, doesn't God speak in Aramaic in Daniel? He must. He goes to, he probably knows every language, so it kind of makes sense. And there's lechol zonot, there's this verse, lechol zonot itnu nede, ve'at natat et nedanaich lechol ma'avaich. To all prostitutes, they give gifts, but you gave your gifts to all your lovers. That's kind of easy to know from the context, but nede and nedanaich, basically the word for gift, is not actually Hebrew, because the Hebrew root for to give is natan with a t, but this is n with a d, and this is from Akkadian. So nede comes from nidnu, which is gift, or nudunu, which is dowry. So that's how we know this phrase wasn't difficult, because you could kind of get from the context what it means. But to all the prostitutes they give gifts, but you gave your gifts or your dowry to your lovers. Either you gave gifts to your lovers or you gave away your dowry. And the dowry was very important for women in the ancient world because that was the property they came with to their husband's house. And if they divorced, that was what they kept. I mean, not always. There are many laws and many ways to look at this. But basically, she's so enthusiastic, she's giving away things to her lovers instead of the other way around. And then there's a lovely word. How are we on time, by the way?
We are good. We are at 36 minutes. 36
minutes. So we have up to, yeah, okay. So I think I'm going to skip a bit to the really good things. This is a description of, I think you've talked about this a lot, by the way, in another context, the Tyre prophecies of Ezekiel. You have discussed this extensively in another context. But this is the context of the wording of the prophecies themselves. So God says that Nebuchadrezzar, which is another name for Nebuchadnezzar, Nabuchodonosor in Babylon, in Akkadian, he will come to Tyre and he will basically destroy everything and they will be very unhappy. And they say, for thus says the Lord God, will bring against Tyre from the north King Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon, king of kings, together with horses, chariots, cavalry, and a great and powerful army. Your daughter towns in the country he shall put to the sword. He shall set up a siege wall against you, cast up a ramp against you, and raise a roof of shields against you. He shall direct the shock of his battering rams against your walls and break down your towers with his axes. Now, first of all, the Hebrew's better. I suggest, the Bible has this kind of poetry that's kind of hard to convey in English, very different languages. But so far the translation seems kind of fine, except that it isn't. It is a lie. This is all a lie. Don't trust anything. He shall direct the shock of his battering rams. That is umechi kavalo yiten b'chomotaich. Again, mechi kavalo is not Hebrew. That is many things. It's not Hebrew. It doesn't have any meaning in Hebrew. But they kind of came to the conclusion. So mechi, it's derived from this Aramaic kind of a root. It also exists in modern Hebrew, meaning a strike. And it could mean that, but kavalo was really difficult. So the commentators had no idea what this is. And they just said battering rams, because the next thing they say, and he will shatter your towers with his sword. So it makes sense that they say he will destroy your walls. He will bring up battering rams against your walls. But then Akkadian came along, which is the wonderful ending to many sad stories. So this is the White Knight at the end of the story. And mechi kavalo, we have the transliteration here, is in fact mechi kabelshu, the storm of his battle. And for those asking why one ends with an or and one ends with a shu, it's the exact same thing. It's the third person singular possessive ending. So mechi kavalo is the exact parallel to mechi kabelshu, the storm of his battle. While mechi may be related to what did it say here? The shock, maybe related to the shock of his battle, but kavalo is certainly from kablu, battle. And you might ask, but that's a kind of a strange thing. Storm of his battle, bring up his battle against you. That doesn't sound right. But that's the way you say it in Akkadian. A lot. Battle is his own thing. For example, Shamati ma'ina sharani kulad nakiri la ischuru la ishnu kabal shumaman, whose battle none among all the enemy kings ever sought a second time. This is from a Shunasipal. His battle is the strong tide whose onslaught cannot be rivaled. The kings fear your battle. That's from the Tukulti Nuta epic, wonderful text. So not only is the use correct, that battle is this concrete thing that can do things and can destroy things and you can be afraid of. This is a perfect change from the Akkadian into Hebrew. So I have God speaking in Akkadian again. And this shows how much Assyriology can help you understand the Bible in a very concrete sense. I'm not talking at the level of general ideas, but very concretely what words mean. And actually looked, and while the expression, the storm of his battle is in mechi, the mechi and the kablum, mechi kabelshu isn't attested, the synonym of kablum is tachazum, which is just another word for battle. And the storm of their battle is actually attested. Not in the exact same meaning. It says, in the storm of their battle, this is a great battle there, one man could not see another, but the phrase is attested. But whatever the storm is, whether it's a storm or a strike, this is God speaking Akkadian. Kavalo is kablu. And this is wonderful. That's Akkadian can help us understand things, which is very nice. Even in a text that's been interpreted for 2,000 years. Then we have another thing that I may get to at the end. But this is basically a list of words that were borrowed in Ezekiel. Ishkar from Ishkaru, work assignments, tables, materials. Brumim, which is from burumu, speckled, multicolored, when referencing fabrics. Oh, this is a lovely example, the third one. The dani from danu, wine vats, or danai. And you see the exclamation mark? So in the Bible, there's ktiv and kire. Sometimes when you can't change the text on a physical level, the text is sacred, but you can, when you have words that you think are corrupted, kind of write a note in the margins with the correct reading. And this happens sometimes with words in the synonyms. So we have the Akkadian word, danai or dani, they don't give the Hebrew here, which is replaced with yain, which is a good Hebrew word for wine. But the original was very good too. It's just a Babylonian word for wine vat. So we have kind of the scribes kind of working on their text and making it sound more Hebraic, one might say. And then we've got some other things. And kablo. Also, knemida, which we still use to this day in Hebrew. Reed of measurement. This is kind of the standard by which. So this is knemida, and this is from Babylonian. Bodyguards, cover of implements, red clay or paste. And it makes sense that he would use the word for clay in Mesopotamia. There's so much of it. So Ezekiel, he's spending his time in Babylonia, talking to these Babylonians in Aramaic or Akkadian, and maybe he didn't have a prejudice against Akkadian words. He just talked. He was in Babylonia for decades, so of course, when he would speak or write, or his followers would speak or write, there would be some Babylonian in there to spice it up. And I think Akkadian's pretty spicy. I mean, not so much, but it's nice. It's like the Sriracha, the Sriracha of languages. Could be spicier. Okay. And now we get to this wonderful, wonderful bit. So at the beginning, after Ezekiel would be a theater major today. He would definitely be a theater kid because he does all of these kind of demonstrations and performance art that must have looked absolutely ridiculous. He's just so funny. So God tells him basically to kind of do some performance art about the siege of Jerusalem and about the fate of Judah and Israel. I'm going to read you the translation of the text as we have it. And you, this is God speaking, of course it's God speaking. And you, O mortal, take a brick and set it before you. On it portray a city, Jerusalem, and put siege works against it. Again, this is on a brick. He's just drawing things on a brick. I'm just saying. And build a siege wall against it, then cast up a ramp against it. He's basically building a sand castle. And set up camps also against it and plant battering rams against it all around. Then take an iron plate and place it as an iron wall between you and the city. So he's like having this brick and he's kind of making all those drawings and then he's laying down next to it and he's having this plate. Again, the laughter that must have been going on. So you have this plate, set your face toward it and let it be in a state of siege. And press the siege against. I don't know how he pressed the siege against it. I don't know what he did. Probably threw some earth at it. This is a sign for the house of Israel. Then lie. So Then lie on your left side and place the punishment of the house of Israel upon it. You shall bear the punishment for the number of the days that you lie there. The Hebrew is very unclear, by the way. For I assign to you the number of days, 390 days, equal to the number of the years of the punishment. And so you shall bear the punishment of the house of Israel. When you've completed these, you shall lie down a second time, but on your right side, and bear the punishment of the house of Judah. 40 days I assign you, 1 day for each year. So what is punishment? People kind of came up with the idea that punishment is the exile. The Judeans ended up being exiled for about 40 years, from 586 to 539. As for the number 390, no one knows what that means because 390 is such a random number, and it's really, if you go 390 years before 539, you end up in the 10th century. We have no idea. However, the Greek text, the Septuagint, I must be mispronouncing that. It always sounds like spaghetti to me. Has different numbers, and even when I read the Greek text, it wasn't in the translation of the Greek text. It wasn't entirely clear. I'm basing myself on scholars here. You lie on your left side for 150 days, on your right for 40 days, to a total of 190. So let's talk about why this could make sense. On the level of the exiles, this could make sense because 150 years before 539 is about 700. And if you take, give or take a few decades, that's about when the the people of the kingdom of Israel were exiled. Okay, so it would kind of match. 150 and 40 also appear in the flood story. There was 40 days of rain in 150 days on which the water prevailed on the land. So that's kind of similar. But what is very strange, that the way Babylonians write left is with the number 150, which is weird. You literally write left with 150 for the left, and Ezekiel's lying down on his left for 150 days. And not only that, but 40 is a coefficient in 150. So coefficient, the way the Babylonian system works, a lot of math works, is that you try to get to 60, and there's a kind of operation called the coefficient, which is basically, what is the number's coefficient? It is, never mind. You can Google what the coefficient is. It's what they do in Babylonia. It's a way to get to 60. Math. Totally forgot it. Let me actually pull this up. Let me tell you what a coefficient is.
Unfortunately, I am of very little help when it comes to math.
No, it's fine. It's also Babylonian math. So, yeah. 1 second. Elevator music. Pretend I prepared this in advance like I should have. Okay. So the reciprocal, not the coefficient. So the reciprocal is if you take 100. So okay, I'm going to share in different screen now. And for those who know math, you could go from there. Stop sharing. Share screen. Window. This is from Winitz's piece. Share. So in its counterpart in this instance, 40 represents the reciprocal. So the reciprocal is, what is a number's reciprocal? You take 1, you divide it by the number, and multiply it by 60. So if we take 1 divided by 150 times 60, you get to 40, which in Babylonia is represented by 2/3, because 40 is 2/3 of 60. Just ignore this. Math, numbers, terrible. Just don't. Just know that this is what the Babylonians do with math. And okay. Okay. No. Okay. Yeah. Shit. So we have, he's lying on his left side for 150 days, which is Babylonian writing for 150, which is the Babylonian writing for left, and then he's writing down on his 40, which we get to through the process of whatever getting a reciprocal is, that the Babylonians do all the time. When you read Babylonian math, it's all about reciprocals. That's how they did math. So this is a strangely Babylonian flavor. So we kind of have a decision. Is that a historical thing with 40s of exile for the Judeans and 150 for the Israelites? Is it a biblical thing referencing the numbers in the flood story? Is it a Babylonian thing? Or we don't really know. This is the kind of thing. But it is interesting that 150 is writing for left and he lies on his left for 150 days. Kind of weird. Okay, now we have some more foreboding stuff. This is another vision. Then he cried, of course it's God, I don't even have to say, in my hearing with a loud voice, saying, draw near, you executioners of the city, each with his destroying weapon in his hand. And 6 men came from the direction of the upper gate, which faces north, each with his weapon for slaughter in his hand. Among them was a man clothed in linen, with a writing case at his side. They went in and stood beside the bronze altar, and then he tells them to kill all the people in Jerusalem. It's a vision, of course, doesn't literally happen, but it foresees the destruction by Nebuchadnezzar. So let's actually read some of this. Now the glory of the God of Israel had gone up from the cherub on which it rested to the threshold of the house. The Lord called to the man clothed in linen who had the writing case at his side and said to him, go through the city, through Jerusalem, and put a mark on the foreheads of those who sigh and groan over all the abominations that are committed in it. To the others he said in my hearing, pass through the city after him and kill. Your eye shall not spare, and you shall show no pity. So and then they kill. So this is very much like the Passover story, in which you put this mark, in which God told the Israelites to put a mark over their houses, so they will not be killed when all the firstborn are killed. But it's kind of the same story. So we have 6 men, and one among them who wears the scribe's kit. So when I read that, I completely thought that one of them, so there are 6, and one of them has a scribe's kit. But apparently commentators take it to mean that there are 7. So 6 men with, because they do say 6 men with each with a weapon for slaughter. So let's just say, follow the commentators, there might be 7. And if there are 7 executioners, 7 people who kill everyone, that is very much like the Mesopotamian 7, which are gods of destruction and death we talked about last time. So this is from the Era epic. Just what are the 7? What do they do? So I think the best way to actually... so this is a scene in the Arabic of the commissioning of the 7. When Anu, king of the gods, sowed his seed in the earth, she, that is to say the earth, bore him 7 gods. He called them the 7. How, he wasn't very creative on that day. They stood before him that he ordained their destinies. He summoned the first to give his instructions. Wherever you go and spread terror, have no equal. He said to the second, burn like fire, scorch like flame. He commanded the third, look like a lion. Let him who sees you be paralyzed with fear. He said to the fourth, let a mountain collapse when you present your fierce arms. To the fifth, he said, blast like the wind, scan the circumference of the earth. The sixth, he enjoined, go out everywhere and spare no one. The 7th, this is my favorite. This is a great translation by Foster. The 7th, my professor here. The 7th, he charged with viper's venom, slay whatever lives. So they're not nice. That's what I'm saying. They just kill people. And there's a different description of them from an incantation series against demons, and I love this. There are 7 in the depths of the absolute, is to say the primeval ocean, freshwater ocean. There are 7 adorned in heaven. There are 7. They grew up in the depths of the Apsu in the cellar. They are not male or female. They are drifting ghosts. They take no spouse. They beget no son. They do not know how to spare lives or show mercy. They do not know how. They do not hear prayers or entreaties. The Akkadian here, they do not know how to spare or show mercy. They just don't know. They're basically like viruses. I really like to think of them as viruses. Like, you can't pray to a virus, and it doesn't really have a choice. It kind of, its life is your death. It isn't even malicious in a way. So like that. So the 7 executioners might be related to these 7. I'm not entirely convinced by this, because there's one guy who's a scribe, and 7 is this kind of typological number anyway. And maybe this is, I'm bringing things from scholarship. Of course, none of these are my ideas. I wish they were my ideas, but then again, I wouldn't have had to write my Ph.D. then, because I would have had, it written up already. So I think the last thing, maybe we'll do a last thing, then we'll open up to questions. Okay. So again, why knowing Akkadian is good. So this is a prophecy of weal. This is a phrase I learned from reading commentaries on the Bible. A good prophecy of salvation. The house of Israel shall no longer find a pricking briar or a piercing thorn among all their neighbors who have treated them with contempt. And they shall know that I am the Lord God. And then, so they shall live in safety when they execute judgments upon all their neighbors who have treated them with contempt. So, how do we know it's contempt? A, context. B, Akkadian. So, the Hebrew is... actually, I have the phrase here. Hashoatim. Hashoatim. Now, I do actually have to write this down. So pretend this T is a tet. But so hashoatim, it's not a word. It's a word that occurs only in Ezekiel, and it most probably comes from the Akkadian verb shatu, which I'm not going to put chateau in Arabic, but it's probably the whole issue of these letters, these sounds in Akkadian is very complicated. So let's just pretend it's a T with a T. Those who look at someone with contempt, those who hold someone in contempt. So the people who hold you in contempt, and we know this from the Akkadian, will come to shame. And there's a great definition of what contempt is, what sha'ishetu is, and it utilizes the parallelism I talked about before. So when we have a word that we don't really know, it really helps when they say the same thing again and again. It's like a translation. They're kind of translating themselves. So this is from the Tukulti-Ninurta epic, which is an epic about the Assyrian king Tukulti-Ninurta, and he fights with Babylonia, a great text. Ul adur gipish umanatishu siseshu ashetma ana mude kuradishu shetachlupti nish ine ul arshi. So he's basically saying the same thing 3 times. I was unafraid of the great size of his army. And then Ashet. I was contemptuous of his cavalry. I did not consider the large number of his armored elite troops. I did not consider, doesn't really portray the Akkadian well. In Akkadian, they say, I did not have a lifting of the eyes as to them. I didn't even look at them. So basically, to hold someone in contempt is to basically not look at them, not be afraid of them. Hold them in contempt. It's a great, the English word really works really well here. And I think the best way to look at what holding someone in contempt is from a lexical list, which is a list with basically words in Sumerian, words in Akkadian, to kind of compare them. It's a bit like a dictionary, but really complicated. It's the whole thing. Mesopotamians really love them. So Igi Tur is Natsu. What does that mean? So Igi is eye, and Tur is small. So small eye is to disdain or to insult. What I think about this, when you make someone small with your eyes, when someone is small in your eyes, you disdain them. And when someone is extra small in your eyes, small, that is when you hold them in contempt. So that is what contempt is. So what I tried to do in this is like, learn Akkadian or not. It's a hard language and also not very... you could put that time towards stuff you can put on LinkedIn or actual interesting stuff. Anyway, Akkadian's good, and you can know more about the Bible with it. So if you care about the Bible, it can also help.
Thank you, Eli. I have to say Akkadian is wonderful, and it does save the day, and is just a beautiful, fantastic language. And someone did ask how to go about learning Akkadian.
Oh, that is a great question. I love that you asked that question. So there are basically a couple of ways. So the best way, unfortunately, is with other people. Learning any language on your own is difficult, but learning a dead language on your own is even more difficult. And learning a language that doesn't have any cognates with English on your own is more difficult than all that. So if there's a course next to you, yes, but that isn't practical advice for most people because they can't just drop in to an Akkadian course twice a week. People have jobs.
Why not?
Yeah. So there's a book by John Hunegard called Grammar of Akkadian, which can serve as you can use it to teach yourself. There's also Martin Worthington, the great scholar, who did the Babylonian for the last Marvel movie.
I heard about that, which is awesome.
I haven't watched it yet because I'm an idiot, but Martin.
I've actually got the link for that book. It's Complete Babylonian Beginner to Intermediate. It's on the screen if you're interested in it. And I worked through the precursor that he first wrote for that, and it's a good one. Again, like Eli said, the easiest way is to do it with other people, but if that's not an option, then a learn it yourself book this is a good second choice.
Doing an Akkadian course online, I'm sure someone will do it. There are enough astrologers. Actually, he did an online when the pandemic started. I did an online Akkadian Zoom thing.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, it was great. Unfortunately, now I have to write my Ph.D. So,
a little bit busy.
A little bit busy. Yeah, so I would go with Worthington or Hunegard and just go through it. There's no way around it. You just do the exercises. Akkadian has a lot of grammar. If you haven't done a Semitic language before, difficult, but it's really fun. And also I want to say, look, it's not essential learning Akkadian. The translations we have are very good. For most texts you'll have to read. There's just a new translation of Gilgamesh by Sophus Heller, who I know and is great. So there are many translations. Well, if you want to read Gilgamesh, for example, there are 3 great translations to choose from. And Numa Elish as well. There's Benjamin Foster's book, Before the Music, we talked about. So if you want to read literature, you can read the translation, and it's as good as it gets. The reason to learn Akkadian mostly is for if you want to go into research in the field, in Assyriology. But otherwise, we do have really good translations, and you're not really missing out. Sometimes even I read the translations of text before they come, because reading the Akkadian is a lot of work, and I trust that the translations are good. And also, of course, reading stuff in a living language, in your own language, has a completely different resonance. You can't, when you read something in a dead language, it doesn't strike the same emotion.
Mm-hmm.
The translation is actually more resonant. So,
thank you. We have a couple of other questions, and
if I don't know, I don't know.
Exactly. And Eli did mention he's not a biblicist, and I'm not a biblicist. And Josh is busy, so he can't come in here and be our biblicist. But Charles would like to know if we can explain why the Ezekiel 16 baby was an abomination.
So this is a reference, as far as I understand, to the story of Judah itself, how they basically came to replace the Hittite. And so before, according to the biblical story, before the people came back from Egypt, there were the Hittites and the Amorites. So this is kind of mocking them, saying that the Judeans, grew out from the Amorite and the Hittite, as though the Judeans were just these riffraff, basically. I guess it's an abomination because, the Bible really doesn't like Hittites and Amorites. But God is basically saying, you basically kind of mocking them, kind of doesn't really fit the rest of the biblical text, but it says, you arose from the Hittites and the Amorites, and I came and I sanctified you. You were just no one before I came and found you. What is it like? No, I can't really find a real good example of that. But I think you should focus on the Bible-hating Hittites and Amorites and how bad they are. It really doesn't like them. That's as best an answer as I can give, but you can find many good answers to that online, I am sure.
And we had more of a comment than a question. Lord Enki bless you and your beautiful family.
And I do very much like the cuneiform. Lord Enki bless you and your beautiful family. I think that's a reference. I think that's to you, of course.
My family do tend to come in quite frequently. So appreciated. Thank you very much. And there were more questions that I just scrolled past, so I'm going to go and find them. Good questions too. I always love your guys' questions. There we go. It appears in the Seven Demons chant spread in the ocean in the middle of the field is in the Hellboy comments.
What the heck?
Which is amazing. I did not know that.
I had no idea. I love this. Please, I will look this up. Really? Wow. Amazing. Great. I'm going to look this up. This is great.
It's always good when Mesopotamia kind of bleeds through into popular culture.
Always comics horror movies. I'm going to look at. I love that. Thank you very much.
That is wonderful. How do scholars know what was copied, heavily inspired, and what was just common cultural background?
Well,
that's the question, really, isn't it?
There's a lot into it. It's a great question that you kind of have to answer for each case. So sometimes the more specific the parallels, the more we say this was copied. So like the flood story, we say was based on the Babylonian model because it's so specific. The parallels are so specific. The ark and the dove and the flood and everything. So that's very similar. But then again, maybe they were both based on the same thing. We don't know. So all I can say depends on the case. The more specific the similarities are, the higher the probability that we say something was copied. Especially if one thing is substantially earlier than the other thing. But when I say earlier, I mean it's attested earlier. It doesn't necessarily mean it's earlier, but it means that it might be. It means that it might be. It does mean that it might be earlier. Yes. Okay.
There we go. I was muted. So that was all of the questions, and I'm going to end it there because I can hear my other baby screaming in the background, which means that they both need to go and sleep. But Eli, this was an absolute beautiful kind of romp through Ezekiel. Thank you so much.
Yeah, my pleasure. Great.
Everyone enjoyed it. We had lots of comments saying that they love how knowledgeable you are and that they love how enthusiastic you are. And your theatrical readings of the Hebrew Bible were very appreciated. So, just keep doing what you're doing. Basically, you're on to a winner.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. We will see you next time. And remember, resist poor scholarship. Always ask, how do you know that?
Please do. Okay.
Digital Hammurabi is made possible by generous sponsorship from our patrons. Their support means that we have the technological and academic resources necessary to bring the ancient world directly to you. If you want to join the team, go to patreon.com/digitalhammurabi to see how you can help.